Everything Marvel has done in the last decade has been leading up to this, Avengers Infinity War. But the story of the Marvel Universe on the big screen is much longer and spans all the way back to the creation of the universe itself. After the Big Bang, 6 pre-existing singularities formed into the 6 Infinity Stones. They hold immense power, which is why Thanos wants to collect them all and bend reality to his will. Billions of years later, Peter Quill's dad, Ego, is born. He gains self-consciousness and creates a new planet for himself, and then starts planting seeds in other worlds with the intent to absorb all life one day. Millions of years later, the convergence occurs, an event that lines up all the 9 worlds, from Earth or Midgard to Asgard. The Dark Elves of Svartalheim try to destroy the 9 realms with the power of the Ether, another Infinity Stone, but they are defeated by Bor, Thor's granddad. Thor's elder sister Hela is born years later. Along with Odin, she builds Asgard into an empire, but her ambition knows no limits. Odin is forced to battle and imprison his daughter, and again when she tries to escape a millennium later, killing the army of Valkyries save for Brunhild. 2 decades later, the frost giants of Jotunheim try to conquer Earth, and Odin amasses his Asgardian army to repel the invasion, forcing them back home where he finds an abandoned frost giant baby. Odin adopts him and calls him Loki. Fast forward to the 1930s. In Germany, Abraham Erskine is forced to inject Johann Schmidt with his super soldier serum, which turns him into the Red Skull. Meanwhile in the US, after Peggy Carter rescues Erskine, Howard Stark, that's Tony's father, uses his Vita radiation technology with Erskine's serum on Steve Rogers, who becomes the world's first super soldier. Rogers then goes behind enemy lines to rescue his best friend Bucky Barnes, but in the ensuing battle with Hydra aboard a train, Barnes falls to his death. He then battles the Red Skull aboard the Valkyrie, which is carrying weapons of mass destruction, and is forced to crash the plane into the Arctic. Stark and Carter found S.H.I.E.L.D. sometime later, while Barnes is found by Arnim Zola and his Hydra agents, now working inside S.H.I.E.L.D., who proceed to wipe his memory, give him a metal arm, and keep him on ice to use him as an assassin. He becomes known as the Winter Soldier. Jump forward a few decades. Ego comes to Earth, falls in love with Meredith and has a child with her, before planting a cancerous tumor in her and leaving her to die reluctantly because his own planet is dying in his absence. Years later, Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne help disarm a Soviet ICBM, but Janet seemingly dies in the process after having to turn off her suit's regulator. In the following years, a young Peter Quill is kidnapped by Yondu and the Ravagers, and Tony's parents, Howard and Maria Stark, are killed by the Winter Soldier to get the Super Soldier Serum. At a covert Russian facility, Natasha Romanoff excels at her training, becomes a master spy, and one of the world's greatest assassins, earning the nickname Black Widow. At a New Year's Eve party for Y2K, Tony Stark meets Maya Hansen, the maker of Extremis Virus, and Aldrich Killian. Less than a decade later, while demonstrating Stark missiles in Afghanistan, Tony Stark is kidnapped by a terrorist organization called 10 Rings. With help from a fellow captive, Stark builds a battle suit and escapes. He returns home, builds himself a new arc reactor and a suit, and then defeats the guy who tried to have him killed. And at a press conference the next day, he confirms he's Iron Man and is then approached by Nick Fury regarding the Avengers initiative.
I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger initiative.
Some months later, Stark is attacked by the vengeful son of Howard Stark's partner in Monaco. Meanwhile in Asgard, Thor is stripped of his powers for retaliating against the frost giants and cast out to Earth. Stark meanwhile creates a new element that powers a new arc reactor and then defeats Anton Vanko. Back in New Mexico, Jane Foster finds Thor, who is unable to lift his hammer Mjolnir. Loki discovers he's a frost giant, and ruling Asgard in Odin's stead, he sends the destroyer after Thor, who is able to defeat it after sacrificing himself. Thor returns to Asgard and has to destroy the Bifrost Bridge to stop Loki from committing genocide. Steve Rogers is discovered by scientists in the Arctic and is transported to New York, where he wakes up in 2011 and is informed by Nick Fury that he's been asleep for 70 years. Less than a year later, Loki arrives on Earth with the help of a spectre given to him by Thanos and steals the Tesseract. He then uses the Tesseract to open a portal into space and declare war on Earth with the Chitauri as his army. The Avengers come together for the first time to stop the invasion. Thor takes Loki and the Tesseract to Asgard, Stark starts rebuilding his tower as the Avengers Tower, and Cap joins S.H.I.E.L.D. With New York bearing the brunt of the battle, Adrian Toomes gets the contract to clean up the city, but he's driven out of business by the government working with Stark. After Happy Hogan is injured in an attack orchestrated by a terrorist known as the Mandarin, Stark makes a televised threat, and the Mandarin responds by destroying his mansion. But the Mandarin turns out to be a puppet controlled by Aldrich Killian, who's injected himself with the extremist virus. Stark wins the day with the help of a remotely controlled Iron Legion and Pepper, who's gained powers herself thanks to extremists, and kills Killian. In London, Jane Foster investigates an atmospheric anomaly, which is linked to an approaching convergence. She accidentally falls through a portal and is infected by the ether, releasing it and awakening Malekith. Thor returns to Earth and takes her back to Asgard, while Malekith attacks Asgard and kills Thor's mom Frigga while looking for Jane. Thor, Loki, and Jane travel to Svartalheim to take on the Dark Elves, where Loki seemingly dies. As the convergence occurs, Thor fights Malekith across different realms and wins. He returns to Asgard, where he turns down the throne. Loki, in the guise of Odin, starts to rule Asgard. And the ether is given to the Collector for safekeeping. Back on Earth, months later, Nick Fury is attacked and he's forced to go underground. In a secret bunker, Cap and Black Widow discover Hydra has been rebuilding itself from within S.H.I.E.L.D. with Alexander Pierce as the sleeper agent. The Winter Soldier ambushes them later, and during the fight, Cap finds out that it's actually his best friend Bucky. With the help of Fury, Black Widow, and the Falcon, Cap takes down S.H.I.E.L.D. While slowly remembering his past life, Bucky saves Cap from drowning and disappears. Soon after, at an Hydra facility, Wolfgang von Strucker uses Loki's scepter to experiment on twins Wanda and Pietro Maximoff. Across the cosmos, a grown-up Peter Quill, now going by Star-Lord, steals the orb. Ronan is summoned by Thanos and told to retrieve it from Quill, who's made a ragtag team while escaping from a prison on Nowhere. Ronan gets the orb and attacks Xandar, but the Guardians manage to stop him together and hand over the orb, which contains an Infinity Stone, to the Nova Corps. A few months later, the Guardians get themselves in trouble with the golden-skinned Sovereign race, and Quill's father, Ego, saves them and brings them to his home planet. There, Ego convinces Quill to help activate the seeds he planted, but with the help of the other Guardians and his newfound celestial powers, Quill fights back. He defeats Ego, and Yondu sacrifices himself to save Quill, who realizes that Yondu was his true dad. Back on Earth, the Avengers raid Von Strucker's Hydra facility and retrieve Loki's scepter, which Stark and Banner secretly use to complete Ultron, who thinks humans are Earth's biggest problem and turns on them. The Avengers follow Ultron to Sol, where Stark secretly uploads Jarvis into a synthetic body, which Thor strikes with lightning, creating Vision. Thankfully, Vision turns out to be benevolent, and he, along with the Maximoff twins, help the Avengers to defeat Ultron and his army of robot drones in Sokovia. A dissatisfied Thanos puts on a gauntlet and vows to collect the Infinity Stones on his own. A few months after, Scott Lang is told he was tricked into breaking Hank Pym's house and begins training with Pym and his daughter Hope Van Dyne to become the new Ant-Man. After a failed attempt to steal the Yellow Jacket, Lang takes on Pym's former protege Darren Cross, shrinks to subatomic size to defeat him, disappearing into the quantum realm, but manages to reverse the effects and save himself. Later in Nepal, Caecilius steals pages for a forbidden ritual and escapes via portals in London. Meanwhile in New York, a brilliant neurosurgeon, Stephen Strange, severely injures himself in a car accident, ending his career. Owing to a blast in Nigeria and the Avengers' past collateral damage, the UN proposes the Sokovia Accords to regulate superhuman action. Meanwhile, Strange arrives in Nepal to find a cure for himself at Kamartaj and begins his training under the Ancient One. The Avengers are divided over the Sokovia Accords, and the situation gets worse when a terrorist bomb planted by Helmut Zemo in Vienna kills King T'Chaka of Wakanda, and all signs point to Bucky as the culprit. After he's captured and escapes thanks to Zemo, the Avengers form sides. Cap brings in Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch and Ant-Man, while Stark flies to New York to recruit a young Peter Parker, who joins Black Widow, Black Panther and Vision. The two sides fight at an airport where Stark's friend Rhodes is seriously injured while Cap and Winter Soldier escape. They arrive at a secret Hydra facility in Siberia and are joined by Iron Man. Zemo shows Stark how his parents died and he turns on Cap and Bucky. In their fight, Cap comes out on top, but he throws down his shield after Stark points out his dad made it for him. The Avengers are torn apart. Peter Parker runs home, Stark helps Rhodes at the new Avengers facility, Cap frees his friends from the raft, and the Winter Soldier goes back under in Wakanda. There, T'Challa is crowned as the new king, but when his rule is challenged by an outsider, Eric Killmonger, Black Panther has to defeat him and take back control of Wakanda. Back in New York, having kept the Chitauri tech they salvage, Toomes and Co. use it to make and sell weapons to the black market, including a wingsuit for himself. Peter Parker resumes school but repeatedly gets himself or his friends in trouble, attracting the attention of Toomes, aka the Vulture. After Stark saves him a second time, he takes away the suit. Parker finds out Toomes is his crush Liz's father, who threatens him. Nevertheless, Parker puts on his old suit and stops Toomes and then saves his life. An impressed Stark invites him to join Avengers full-time, but Parker declines. Meanwhile in Nepal, Strange learns how to bend time with the Eye of Agamotto, which contains an Infinity Stone, while Caecilius contacts Dormammu of the Dark Dimension to help him take over Earth. Strange arrives in Hong Kong to find the Dark Dimension engulfing Earth and creates a time loop around Dormammu and himself. After Dormammu realizes killing Strange is futile, he gives in to his demands, takes Caecilius and leaves Earth. Far away from Earth, Thor returns to Asgard after defeating Surtur and outs Loki posing as Odin. Together, the two travel to Earth to look for Odin, where Strange informs them he's in Norway. Odin dies, which allows his firstborn Hela to escape from her prison. She destroys Mjolnir, pushes Thor and Loki to Sakaar, and then installs herself in Asgard. Thor meets Hulk, and with help from Valkyrie and Loki, they return to Asgard. Thor loses his right eye while facing Hela and realizes the only way to stop her is to allow Ragnarok to happen. With Asgard destroyed, Thor and the remaining Asgardians chart a course for Earth, but they are intercepted by a spaceship belonging to Thanos. And that brings us to Infinity War. Thanos is fed up of post-credit scenes and he's now decided to take on everyone himself. Well, with a little help. It's not going to be pretty, we just don't know how bad it will get. Thanks for watching. For all things tech, pop culture and Marvel, stay tuned to galaxystreet.com.